Story. Once upon a time. Time. Okay. So this story, yeah, this was a story the Holy told me when I was in. So I left I left what's it called? What's that place called? Tirana, yeah, for Tbilisi, yeah. So my my flight was from Tirana to Istanbul, Istanbul to Tbilisi, right? So I had like this, I'd say, I think it's a 3 or 4 hour layover in Istanbul, and then we got on a flight to Tbilisi, yeah. So that 3 hours, yeah, the Holy Spirit gave me like give me like a story. So okay, so how did the story come up? When I was in Tirana, yeah, I did something that I usually don't do. I actually took a taxi to the airport. Usually I'll just trek to the airport. I tried to trek, but this time I got like I tried to check, but eventually I took it. I missed Google Maps here. It took me to like a dead end. So and I wasn't in the mood to be doing path tracing and all stuff. So I was like, fuck it, let me just like get a taxi. So I took a taxi, which means I showed up early to the airport. So by the time I got to the airport, right, I sat down inside. I sat on the floor inside the airport, and then in front of me directly there was one blonde girl and one other girl. They were sitting at a table at a cafe. And it looked very like picturesque, yeah. I was like, wow, this is so like picturesque, yeah. I bet this is like a prompt for like a story, just that image. So I was like, Holy Spirit, this is like a prompt for a story. I was like, yep, we could totally write a story about it. So I was like, okay. So Holy Spirit gave me like this story for it. It just said it was like, so there it was like, oh, the story is that that scene that I saw, that girl sitting at a cafe table with her friend, or I don't know, at the airport, right? It was like that scene is like somebody stood them up. I would just imagine somebody stood them up. I was like, huh. It was like, the way people stand, the way people get stood up for like dates. Like you have a date and your date doesn't show up. Yeah. I was like, yeah. It was like something like that. But this time it's for like airplane, right? She's expecting someone to land and the person doesn't land. So the person just stands them up, essentially. So they're being stood up. That's where the story is going to be. I was like, huh. So in my head, I was trying to imagine where the story would go from there. Like, how do we, like, where does the story go from there? How do you explain, somebody stands stood you up at the airport. Like, what kind of story can you build on that? That's like that's like, that's so hard to build on, right? I was like, no, I don't understand that. That's like the end of the story. And that, the way the story goes is that they get stood up, and then eventually they discover that after like the flight that they were tracking lands, everybody in the plane gets off, and they discover that the person that they were waiting for was not on the plane, and then they start crying. She starts crying. One of them starts crying, and she starts crying hysterically. And then obviously she draws attention of everybody in the airport. And then like the HR woman at the airport, essentially, like the person that is in charge of like human relations and like and stuff like that, yeah. She comes to meet the girls and tries to calm her down, and then she's like, okay, she should calm down and tell her everything that happened. And then she manages to calm her down, and then the girl that's crying, she now narrates everything that happened from scratch. So it's the narration of everything that happened that is the story. Do you understand? So the story is being told from like the end. Do you understand? Okay, cool. So let's get to the story. Yeah? Okay, cool. So let me charge my laptop. Let me just plug my laptop in, then we'll start. Today's like a Saturday, so I'm not working. We'll work this evening or tomorrow morning. Okay, laptop is plugged in. Okay, let's go. Okay, cool. So let's start from where I stopped. Right. So the name of the story, I don't even know. Maybe I'll call it like Ring Finger or something off like that. Why are we doing Ring Finger? Because when I was on a plane, there was this girl that sat like for my flight from Tirana to Istanbul. There was this girl that sat like I'll say like she sat I'll say a seat or two away from me, adjacent to me, right? She had like a ring on her finger, but I could not make up. I'm not very familiar with ring with ring math, so I didn't know which finger your ring finger is, which hand first of all the ring finger is on, or which hand the Essentially I could not tell if she was engaged or she was married or she was just wearing a ring. So I did not know. But she was wearing a ring. I just couldn't tell which one it was. But she was really pretty. So I was just on the plane. I was just like, okay, we'll call it ring finger, right? Cool. So the story is called ring finger. So let's go back again. So I told you that they got stood up, right? There are two girls, sitting at just picture this, right? There are two girls at the airport. They're sitting at the cafe at the airport. These airports, these fancy airports that have all these really nice cafes, right? Where people congregate and eat. So there's a table, there are two girls sitting down, right? There's one girl that is older. Her name is Emilia. And then there's one that is 20 years, that is 20. There's one girl that is 32 years old. Her name is Emilia. 33 years old. Her name is Emilia. And then there's one girl that is 20 years old. Her name is Emily, right? Okay, cool. So now the name of the person that they are waiting for, okay, is Dimitri, right? Okay, cool. Dimitri is from Russia. Okay, cool. So Emilia is the mother of Emily, right? So that you're that's impossible. Emilia is just 13. It's just Emilia is 33. And Emily is 20 years old. So if Emily is 20 years old and Emilia is 33, it means there's just a 13-year age gap between them. Don't ask me how I did the math. This is pre-done math. So it's not as if I'm good at math like that or something. It's pre-done math, okay? So it means that Emilia is 13 years older than Emily, right? Which means Emilia had Emily when she was 13 years old. So how did that happen, right? Okay, cool. So this is where the story starts from. So again, just to recap, Emilia and Emilia are sitting at the airport. They're having coffee. And then they're waiting for a flight. Let's say the flight number is flight, flight 585. We'll just give a flight name. Yeah? And then eventually the flight lands at the airport. And everybody from the flight alights from the flight and they enter into the airport. And then Emilia and Emily, they discover that the person that they are waiting for, which is Dimitri, was not on the flight. And then Emilia starts to cry profusely. Sorry, Holy Spirit, which one of them is crying? Emily starts to cry profusely. She's crying. And then obviously this causes a stir in the airport because she's crying uncontrollably. So they call in, that's not something you call security for. That's that's a human relations thing. So they call in the HR officer in the airport, which is a woman, right? So the woman manages to calm Emily down. And Emilia that is supposed to be calming Emily down, right? Emilia, which is her mom, that is 13 years older than her, which is supposed to be calming Emily down. She's just looking because she's in shock, right? She's in a state of shock, right? So the woman brings both of them into their office just to get them away from the crowd and stop them from causing a scene, right? And then she's okay, she tries to calm Emily down, okay, tell me what happened, da 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 da. And so Emily starts to narrate everything that happens from scratch. So this is where the story is. So what I'm trying to explain, so that's the backstory, right? Okay, cool. So we're back to how. So let me now give you the backstory of how how Emilia got pregnant at 13. Yeah, drum roll, you guessed it, rape. Okay, cool. So there was a robbery incident, right, at Emilia's house, right? When Emilia was 13 years old, there was a robbery incident in her house. She lives in Poland, right? She grew up in Poland, so there was this robbery incident in their Polish house, right? And it was a man. There were 7 men essentially. 6. Let's just this popular series called 2.5 Men, right? So there were 6.5 men, right? So there were 6 grown-up men, and then there was this young boy that was there, right? So it was real, a teenager, right? About the age of Emilia, right? Okay, cool. So after they had done the robbery, right? They came at night, yeah. They robbed all it was this, this post-Soviet apartment that you have a whole block there, right? So a lot of people in that apartment, they had gone to, this happened in summer, right? Everybody had gone to their summer homes and their, I think they call them banyas, or I don't know. Russians have this, Soviet countries essentially, or post-Soviet countries, they have this thing where they stay in these Soviet blocks, right? Apartments, and then during the summer, they go to back to They are summer cabins essentially. This very nice, very posh summer cabins they have like in the countryside. Very, very nice. Right? Okay, cool. So most people had gone to their summer. So most people in that apartment block, which was like, you know how Soviet buildings are, like very compact, very packed, right? They had gone for their, most family that had returned to their summer houses, right? But Emily's family had not gone. They decided to stay back for summer in their apartment, in their normal Soviet apartment, right? So it was them and one other family that was left in the whole apartment, right? So these thieves came in, and then they came in at night. 7 of them, if like 3 of them, they were robbing their other apartment. The other 3, 4 of them were in Emilia's apartment, right? So after they robbed the apartment, the man, right? One man, they commanded like the youngest boy in the apartment to like the youngest guy in the like in the squad, the squad of thieves. What do you call it? Like a bunch of like of sheep is called a flock. A bunch of like fish is called a school. Okay, gang. The gang of thieves. Okay, cool. So the youngest guy that's in the gang of thieves, which is like the age of Emilia, right? The oldest guy there, right, commanded the youngest guy to like to rape Emilia because he was young. He was 30, probably because they just wanted to, because he was shaking throughout the whole operation, so they wanted him to prove that he was a man, yada yada yada, just to get him like acquainted with the whole thing, right? So he just commanded him to do it. The boy didn't want to do it; he was shaking, but it was held at gunpoint. Both of them were held at gunpoint. Emilia and the young boy, right? So the young boy did what he had to do, and then obviously they left, and then the aftermath of that was that Emilia got pregnant. So that's how Emilia got pregnant at 13, right? Now, because of what had happened, right, when Emilia's parents found out that what had happened, that Emilia was pregnant, they didn't, number one, they wanted to keep the robbery, like, they didn't want to tell anybody about the robbery. They just wanted to keep it, like, underground, right? So they had agreed not to tell anybody, but now Emilia was pregnant. So what were they going to tell all their neighbors when they came back from their summer homes, that how did Emilia get pregnant? She's 13 years old, for God's sake. So they decided to flee, right? So they fled to America, right? So Emilia and her mom moved to America. Their dad stayed back in the Soviet Union, but Emilia and her mom moved back to America. We might change it from Poland to Belarus. I don't know which one we'll pick. Maybe Poland or Belarus or something. Okay, cool. So they fled back to like America, and they stayed in Alabama, right? They stayed in Alabama. They stayed in Alabama. Okay, so now we have to fast forward the story. Yeah, okay, cool. So fast forward to, I don't know, 2026. Let's do 2020. Let's do 2030. Okay, cool. So it's the year 2030, and there's this guy called Dimitri, right? It's year 2030. Emilia is like 33 years old. She's 32 years old now. Emily, which is her daughter, the daughter that she had from rape, is now 19 years old, right? And there's this cool guy called Dimitri, right? So now the whole story is now we're now in Alabama, right? So we're in Alabama, and then fast forward to that, Emilia is like, she's at a flea market. Let's say there's like a flea market in Alabama, right? I'm not familiar with Alabama. I wanted to use Mississippi, but this piece of Alabama, so we're going to stick in Alabama. So she's at a flea market in Alabama, and she bought all this like really cool stuff. And then she tries to, and then she bought a lot of stuff essentially at the flea market. So she tries to call like an Uber, right? She tries to call an Uber, and then the Uber guy shows up, of course. But the Uber guy like turns down, declines, it cancels the ride because she just had too many stuff. She had just bought too many things, and the guy was like, "There's no way I'm putting all these things in my Uber. I have other customers. The car will be dirty, yada yada yada." So he just like made excuses and left. Right? So as the Uber guy was like canceling the ride and like getting away, we made like a little scene, right? And it was like trying to like cancel the ride, and it was like going away, right? A truck pulled up, right? And in that truck there was this guy, there was this guy in that truck, right? And the guy came out, and the guy was like, the guy was driving like a Ford F-150, right? So the guy put up his Ford F-150, and then he started helping Emilia put her stuff in the truck, right? It was helping Emilia put her stuff in the truck. And then Emilia was like, that no, that she needs like a taxi, she needs like an Uber, or at very least a taxi, and she's trying to get another one. And then the guy spoke up, and then when the guy spoke up, Emilia discovered that the guy had like this Russian accent. Yeah, I can't make a Russian accent, so I'm sorry. You have to imagine that part. So the guy spoke up with this like Russian accent, and then the guy was like, no, that is just like, it's like an immigrant. That he's an illegal immigrant. He just tried to explain to Emilia that it's like an illegal immigrant, that he entered America through the Mexican border, and that the only reason why he was able to enter was that the other guys that he escaped with, that they scaled the wall with, all those guys got caught, right? But he made it in because they did not know that, ICE. They didn't know that when they saw him, because he's Russian, he looks very Caucasian. He doesn't look Mexican, right? They thought he acted as if he was like from the south, and he was trying to like chase the Mexicans away. He had to turn on his own people, his own guys, unfortunately. So that was the cover. So he was able to make it into America. But those other guys, they got arrested and sent back, right? So, but he doesn't have any papers, right? And he's like, so he tried to explain to Emilia that he doesn't have any papers. He's an immigrant. He doesn't have any papers. He's an immigrant. And that, he's staying at a church, right? He's staying at a church currently. He doesn't even have a house. He's staying at a church currently. And the F-150 he's driving is the ride of the pastor of the church, right? And the pastor just borrowed him the truck. So he just wants to help her get her stuff moving. And then if she has any money, that any money would do. He does not try to charge her. That any money she has would be good. And that she should just help him, essentially. So she was like, oh, okay, I could do that. So Emilia was like, okay, she could do that. So Emilia let him pack all her stuff, all the stuff she got from the flea market. He parked it inside the truck, yeah, and then they drove to Emilia's house, right? So on the way, she found out the guy's name is Dimitri, right? And then it's from Russia, yada yada yada. He scales the wall, la da 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 da. The whole story I just told you now. Okay, cool. So now. So they get to the apartment, right? And then Emilia gives a Dimitri, because she's just trying to help him, right? She gives him like $100, and Dimitri's like very, very happy. He's like, oh my god, this is like the best money I've ever gotten in my life. Yeah. Then he was like, okay, and then he was leaving, right? Obviously he was leaving, and then he doesn't have a phone number or anything because he just got into America. So Emilia was like, so he told Emilia that if she had like more like Grand Theft Auto tuned work for him, that he wouldn't mind, right? And then she was like, okay. She mentioned that where did he stay? Then he was like, that is, like he said, he's sleeping at a church, right? So the church he was sleeping at turned out to be the church that Emilia used to go to. She stopped going to that church. So she's actually very familiar with the pastor, right? So she called up the pastor of the church, and then the pastor confirms that, let's put it like this. So she saw the F-150, the Ford F-150 that I was driving, and then she discovered that she has seen that car before. In fact, for a matter of fact, she actually knew the number, right? So she now remembered that, the number is actually the number of like the Ford, the plate number on the F-150 is actually the plate number of the pastor of our former church, right? Our former evangelical church. She's not going to church again, by the way. But that's like the plate number of our church when she was our evangelical church. This is like Alabama. It's a very Christian place, so we have to do this, okay? Okay, cool. So right away she knew she could trust like Dimitri, right? She didn't even bother to call the church. So Dimitri was like, he has to go and return the F-150. But he's so grateful he has just made $100. That's the first money he's making in America. Da, 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 da. The guy's so happy, essentially. So Emilia was like, yes. But I think she thinks she has like... So Emilia discovered that she could like trust Dimitri, right? She can't, the F-150 belonged to the pastor, da, 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 da. She was like, she had another job for him, right? But this one was slightly more nuanced, right? So she asked Dimitri what he used to do before. It was like when he was in Russia, he was in the military, and he used to fight at the Ukraine war. Remember, this is 2013, and the Ukraine war, hopefully by that time will have ended, and then they will have settled their scores and everything. So it's like, He used to be in the military, and before that, he was like a truck driver. He used to drive like delivery stuff from like different parts of like Russia, from let's say St. Petersburg to Moscow. I don't know. Russia is very big. I think it's the biggest country in the world. So he's like a truck driver essentially. That was like his normal work. So what's her name now? Emilia was like, if you're a truck driver, that makes sense. I actually have like a truck related work for you. And it was like, really? She was like, yeah. That she has a daughter. That her daughter is in her daughter Emily, right? She wants to come home for Thanksgiving. Everything is happening around Thanksgiving, by the way. That she wants to come home for Thanksgiving. And she and her friends, they are going to like take a flight down to take a Spirit airline flight. I think Spirit airline is no longer operational, right? I think they stopped working, so we just use Spirit Airlines. That she was going to take a Spirit airline flight down to America. From California to Alabama, right? Which I think is across the country. Forgive my ignorance of geography. Okay, cool, right? But since that this guy is here now, they can save all that money instead of all of them, like 5 of them. What's her name? Emilia and 5 of her friends. Instead of them paying Spirit Airlines all that money, since he has this really nice Ford F-150, he can just go over, pack all their things in his F-150, and then drive them back home, right? And then Dimitri was like, wow, he would love to do that. That he actually low-key misses his like cross-country driving job, right? That is ready when she's ready. So she was like, she should come back tomorrow. So he came back tomorrow. He said he would have to ask the pastor first about explain everything to the pastor. You remember I said that it was the pastor that owned the F-150 that he was driving. So he went back. Let's call the pastor, I don't know, Mike. Because Angel Michael, I don't know. So Pastor Mike, right? So Dimitri goes back to Pastor Mike and then explains the whole thing at Dirk. He just found this girl. Her name is Emilia. Pastor Mike was like, yeah, he actually knows Emilia. She used to be a member of his church. Yeah. And so he explains to him that she paid him $100 for helping her from the flea market. And the pastor was like, yeah, she's very kind. And then he now also explains to the pastor that he has like a gig that she wants to pay him like money, like a lot of money, to just like go and pick her daughter, Emily. Oh, the pastor was like, yeah, he's also very familiar with Emily. That, like he said, they used to come to his church, right? That, but it was like Dimitri was like he was going to need the car for like a week, to go and to drive all the way from Alabama to California, because Emily was like, she went to University of UCLA essentially, or is it UC Berkeley? I don't know. UCLA. Let's say UCLA. She went to UCLA, right? So drive her from UCLA all the way from UCLA back to Alabama. That was it, right? Okay, cool. So the pastor was like, of course, like, can have you one Ford F-150. That has like him, the pastor, he has like another Ford F-150 Lightning, which is like the electric variant of it. That he doesn't need it, right? Okay, she was like, oh, okay. So I was very, very happy. So the next day he drove very early. So that same day he drove back to like Emilia's house, and he was like, he's ready when she's ready. That the pastor has agreed to lend him his Ford F-150 for a week without any pay. I was like, wow, that's very generous of Pastor Mike, right? Okay. So Emilia was like, he can go the next day. So she gave him a lot of money. I think $1,000. I don't know. She was just very generous with him. She gave like $1,000, right? So Dimitri drives over to like, he makes the journey over to like California. He drives over to UCLA. When he gets there, he picks Emily and her friends. And right off the bat here, Emily is like into like older guys-ish. She's young. She's just like a teenager. Most teenagers are into older guys, right? Because they think most of their mates are not mature enough. I don't know. I'm not a girl. Don't ask me. So I'm just following tropes here, please. Okay? There you go. So she kind of like, they hit it off essentially. So she and her friends, all of them, they are instantly attracted to this guy, right? This Dimitri guy, and then he's hot again, and he's from Russia, and he has an accent, like, so the whole thing is so like, and he, like, his face is scarred, like, the whole nine, right? Okay, cool. Right, really, they like the guy, right? So instead of them going home, right now, so Emily has like a YouTube channel, right? Emily has like a YouTube channel, right? She's like a vlogger, right? And she and her friend, they have a YouTube channel. So instead of just going home, she was like, since they have this like ride and they have like a week before Dimitri returns his car, they should just head for Joshua Tree. They should just like, she would use that period to like create content for our YouTube channel, right? So they should just head for, say, I don't know, Joshua Tree, right? This is exactly what they did. So they went to Joshua Tree. Dimitri was like their cameraman. He was like the one filming the whole thing. They had a lot of fun. They are, sparks are flying. They shared some kisses. The whole thing was nice. So essentially, by the time they got back, they went to all sorts of places in California. They climbed. Which nice mountain? Which mountain is in California that they can climb? Sierra. No, sorry. Let me look for all these Marcos. El Capitan. Let's say they did the El Capitan. I think El Capitan is like a mountain in California. So let's say they climbed El Capitan. Actually, I don't even know about El Capitan from Marcos El Capitan, but let's just keep it like that. So, as an iOS developer, I should actually know more Californian themed mountains than this. I know Sierra, I know El Capitan, I know Big Sur, I know. I'm just mentioning Marcos with these names. Okay, we're sticking with El Capitan though. So they went to El Capitan. They climbed El Capitan. They had a lot of fun, and then eventually they started driving back. They started heading back to like California, to like Alabama. Essentially, by the time they got to Alabama, they discovered that Emilia and Dimitri, they're already like, technically they're already dating, right? So Emilia eventually found out about it. She had her reservations about the whole thing, but because Dimitri was like 33 years old. He was 33 years old. He was just 1 year older than Emilia, right? So Dimitri was like 13 years older than Emily, right? So his mom, our mom of Emilia, obviously, she had her own reservations about the whole relationship. It was like inappropriate, to say the least. At least in the eyes of our mom, right? Okay. Let me just cut the whole story short. So essentially, another thing that is very strange about Dimitri is that one of his fingers is missing. Yeah, his ring finger is missing. Right? Okay, cool. So this is going to spoil the whole thing because you probably know where this is going. But I'm just going to round this up. I'm going to flesh this out later, but I just don't want to do that thing where I have like half of a story and I don't tell the other half of the story. I just move on to another story. So this one, we're just going to do it very quickly. I'm not going to flesh everything out yet, but you're going to know it's going to be the whole story essentially. So essentially, Dimitri's ring finger is missing. So the reason why Dimitri's ring finger is missing is because Emily asked Dimitri Emily and Emilia, they asked Dimitri why his ring finger is missing. He's always wearing gloves, right? So when gloves is off, okay. So let's put it like this, right? Okay, cool. So they were moving like. So when he got to California, when he got to UC, they would go back to Alabama, right? Emily was, there's a lot of boxes to move, right? Emily's boxes and her 5 friends, right? So they were moving everything right into like the house. Now, Dimitri is always wearing gloves, bro. He's always on gloves, right? Black gloves, right? So for the first time, he took off his gloves, right? Because it was, his hands were like greasy because he had walked on the way he had walked on, like, there was the car had a problem, like an oil change, right? So his hands were like greasy-ish. So in order to not stain like Emily's like boxes, he had to take off his gloves. So he took off his gloves and then they discovered that, one of his hand was, his ring finger was missing, right? So naturally, everybody questioned him that, bro, how come your ring finger is missing? And he was like, it was like an accident when he was like a child. That he lost his ring finger when he was a child. So they were like, okay, shit happens. Okay. So let me just cut this whole thing short, right? So apparently, I said that there was an incident of rape that happened when Emily was 13 years old, right? Okay, cool. So during that incident here, Emilia beat off the hand. The young guy that raped her, right? She beat off his hand, right? She beat his hand very, very much. She beat very hard into his hand, right? But while he was raping her, essentially, she was biting his hand. She beat his hand. She sunk her teeth into the hand, right? But the hand was not severed or anything. She just remember like sinking her teeth really deep into the hand, right? So apparently, again, let me just cut the whole story short. The whole story short is that Dimitri was actually the guy that raped her, essentially. But he didn't want to do it. It was his dad that made him do it. And because she beat his finger, he beat his hand, right? His hand got like, his dad thought his hand was going to recover, but it didn't. It was infected. And by the time he told his dad, because he didn't want to seem weak to his dad, right? So by the time he told his dad that, oh, that girl that I raped the other day, that he told me to rape the other day, she beats my finger and my hand is like, his hand is bad. He couldn't say any of that. So by the time he eventually confessed his dad, the hand was infected. So they had to chop it off. They had to amputate it. So they amputated his hand. So that's how it doesn't have any hand any longer, right? So, I told you that Emilia had to leave, like, let's not use Poland. Poland or Belarus or this parent. Okay, Belarus. So, I told you that they had to leave, like, Poland, but we're using Belarus now. So, I told you that Emilia's family had to leave Belarus when he found out she was pregnant, right? Okay, cool. So our uncle was like a detective, right? So he's working on the case, right? Let's not do it like that. I made a mistake. Okay, cool. So she beat his finger, right? She beat his finger off, right? And then he left his finger. In fact, that's how the robbery ended. She beat his finger off, and they had to like abort the robbery because because Dimitri was bleeding so much, right? And they had to abandon the robbery, and so Emilia had like a piece of him, right? Essentially. So when Emily's uncle came, which is a detective, they had like Dimitri's finger, right? So they ran that, a finger has this thing called fingerprints, right? So this is like the detective part of the story. So they ran that fingerprint across all the whole database of everybody in Poland, right? In Belarus, Poland, all this place. Poland wasn't okay. So they ran that stuff across everybody that did the fingerprint. They ran it on their fingerprint database in Poland, but it didn't come up with any match. So the case kind of grew cold, right? Okay, cool. So fast forward to like 2030, right? Emilia gets a call from her uncle that during the Russia-Ukraine war, right, that Ukraine attacked a Russian city. I don't know. I'll look for one of the cities that Ukraine attacked. And they were able to secure the city. Now, inside that city was where the Russians kept like the database of all their Soviet states, post-Soviet states, right? The fingerprints database of all their Soviet states, right? So the Ukrainians captured it. Now that the war is over, the Ukrainians have like a copy of that, like, of that database essentially. So essentially they have like, and then Emilia's uncle had like the initiative to like run is like, I'm sorry, by the way, I know I'm making the Russian guy the bad guy here, which I think is very unfair on Russians because they're always like the bad guy in every movie and everything. And they're actually very cool people. The ones I've met, they're like the nicest people in the world, right? So, like I said, we're just doing tropes. We're just leaning into tropes. I'm sure I'm going to make a story where the Russians are the good guys, but let's just do this one just to, fulfill our righteousness, if you will. But they're actually very cool people. Like when I was in Montenegro, right, I met a girl, and she was from Russia, and she was very, very nice to me. And she was in like, I was like passport office. I was trying to go to the UK at the time, right? So she was like, she was like very nice. She was talking to me and everything. She even offered to like for us to go on a hike together. The whole thing, very, very nice. So again, I'm very sorry. Essentially, they ran the database essentially. So Emilia's uncle, she called Emilia that, look, we have this new database, and I ran the fingerprints through that database, and surprise, surprise, we found a match, right? So she was like, oh, she found a match, and then he texted the face of the person and the match that he found, and lo and behold, this was like Dimitri's face, right? But at that time, Dimitri was already out of the country, right? Because he had gone back to Russia. He had enough money now, so he had gone back to Russia. They had gone back to Russia essentially. So Emilia knew that Dimitri was like. So what this means is that Dimitri is actually the father of Emily, right? That has fallen in love with. Yeah. So eventually Dimitri so Emilia calls Dimitri, and then she asked him to explain. She was crying. She was like, he should explain how he lost his finger again. And then Dimitri kind of like, because they were kind of close now, so Dimitri kind of came clean to her that, look, his dad had this robbery gang when he was 13 years old. His dad commanded him to prove to his dad that he was a man, he had to like rape this girl, and then the girl beat his finger off, and then Emilia was like crying. She just hung up on him, right? I think Dimitri put 2 + 2 together. Now Dimitri was supposed to like fly back to Russia, essentially, fly back to America from Russia when he got this call. I I've forgotten how Dimitri explained this thing to me. Essentially, he was supposed to fly back to America. So they were waiting. But he had put Emilia did not tell him anything. She just hung up on him. But he had put two and two together that, maybe she's crying, and she was like, and she was saying why on call. So maybe she's actually the girl. And if she's the girl, then Emily, the girl that is dating, is actually his daughter. So he had put two and two together. So, but he didn't want to break their heart. He was just going to disappear amicably, right? Because he didn't know maybe they were going to arrest him. He just didn't know shit, right? So on the plane, he texted them that he was getting on the plane to come and see them, right? So they were waiting for him at the airport, right? Emilia's plan was that when he came, she would confront him with everything. And then she would just hush. She wasn't planning to arrest him or anything. She just wanted to hush everything down and be like, okay, we'll start a new family, but you can't date this girl. This is your daughter, yada, yada, yada. But Dimitri was not even going to risk it. So he just deceived them. He lied to them that he was going to... he lied to them that it was on a plane. He lied to them about the flight that he was on. He was even texting them fake... He was on a flight to... Sorry, where did he go? Canada. Instead of America. But he lied to them that he was on a plane. He took fake screenshots, fake photos of him on the plane, and he was texting her. So they were sure it was on that flight, but it wasn't, right? So by the time the flight landed, he was on there. And then, but Emilia told Emily everything that happened. So Emily was looking forward to seeing her dad. Do you understand? Ish. Because there was already a love relationship. It wasn't just that kind of love, It wasn't just a father-in-law, essentially. So essentially, that's the end of the story. They never saw Dimitri again. He never contacted them. The end. I just wanted to tell this one too. It was kind of the way he gave me this story was kind of different from the PG stories that I've been telling. It was slightly off, right? And again, like I said, I promise this one has the Russian guy, technically the bad guy. It's not really his fault, it was his dad's fault. But his dad is also Russian, so that makes him the bad guy-ish. I'm going to tell this story where the Russians are the good guys, okay? Just to balance things out. They're always bad guys inside movies, and it's not. It's a stereotype, and it's not good. Bye-bye. So what's the name of the story again? It's called Ring Finger. Bye-bye. Jonas gave me this story at the airport when I was in Istanbul. Everything was in 25 minutes. I promise you it's a lot more detailed than this. I forgot some of it, and then some of it is I'll flesh it out in later. Bye-bye.